So here we have the already installed AstroBeer system and already installed AstroLink 4Pi driver, and in this part of the tutorial we will cover creation and configuration the INDI profile, INDI device profile in this system. So if you have purchased the AstroLink 4Pi device with pre-configured and pre-installed system, here you can start the actual work. But if you have purchased AstroLink 4Pi without the Raspberry Pi and you mounted it by yourself, then please take a look into the first part of tutorial when the installation is covered. So now we are logged in our AstroBeer 4Pi device. We started the CastStars software and let's open the Ecos panel. Ecos panel is a kind of control panel for our astroimaging setup components. And we have already here the AstroLink 4Pi profile that we can edit with this pencil icon. But of course it will not be there and you need to create one. And you can see we have the name for the profile. It started on the local host. We have some simulators in here because there is no real devices connected to AstroLink 4Pi, and of course we have selected the AstroLink 4Pi as the auxiliary device. So now we start the INDI server, and the devices hasn't been connected by default because has been checked in profiles. What we can do now is to take a look into the options tab right now before we connect, because there are some options that we can set up before connection. These are the names for the labels. So the labels are our AstroLink power and PWM regulated outputs. So the names can be set here before connection, and once it is set, like here for example, and the driver is restart, then it will be much easier for us to recognize and different which output we are switching on or off or regulate. After setting the output names, we need to save the configuration. Then we can load it, or we can also clean it if there is something misconfigured. Last thing in the options tab before we connect is PWM cycle, which is the time that cycles the PWM outputs when they are regulated. So currently is by default set for 100 milliseconds. There is another tab, general information, that contains some basic information about the driver, and here on the main tab we can currently do only one thing, that is connect to the device. So when power is on, everything is on, we can just click connect, and then new tabs appears. So yeah, another things we have here are focuser information, so step size, critical focus zone, and steps per critical focus zone. This critical focus zone information is fetched from the telescope simulator device. So if you take a look into the telescope simulator, yeah, you need to probably connect, and then in the options tab, probably, yes, there are information about the aperture, focal length of the telescope, and basing on these values, this critical focus zone information are calculated. So here they are. And the last thing is temperature, external temperature taken from the temperature sensor if that is connected. So next up is general info, we already been there, and options. We have many new things in options tab. And in the options tab, we already discussed the PWM cycle and labels before. So the next thing is step delay in milliseconds. So this is the delay, the time between the focuser motor, stepper motor steps. If there is set like 2 for 2 milliseconds, then the motor makes actual 500 steps per each second. And the Snoop device is the telescope simulator, so the telescope information is being fetched from this device for calculating the critical focus zone. Next thing is max travel of the focuser, so now it's 30 millimeters, and the resolution of microstepping motors or unipolar motor can be set here. If you are using unipolar with gearbox, recommended setting is 1/8, 1/16 step resolution recommended. If you're using the bipolar with or without the gearbox, yeah, it's up to the required resolution. Well, next thing is hold power. So when the stepper focusing motor is not rotating, it can be hold in the position with some predefined power. It can be set. The values that are presented here depends on the device revision. If you're using unipolar motor, yeah, recommended. With gearbox, recommended hold power is 0. So temperature coefficient and temperature compensation can be enabled here and set here. If you can set here the number of steps that the motor will compensate the focuser position per each degree, and of course you need to enable this feature here if you want to have actual temperature compensation to be performed. If you put negative value here, when the temperature decreases, the motor will move the focuser tube outwards. And the focuser tab. So first thing is direction. So if it should be moved outwards or inwards, then there is a relative position. So if you put here like 1600 per set, then the motor will be moved another 1600 steps outwards. Next position is of course absolute position, so you can put here the exact number of steps and the motor will be moved to this value. Maximum position is a configuration parameter, so this is the maximum number of steps that corresponds to the most outward focuser position. Yeah, and then abort button, of course you can abort the focusing motor movement in any moment. And sync. So yeah, if you can see the motor is in this position, but you know it should be in position for like say 5600, then you can set it and it will be updated here. We have two more switches here. Reverse motion can be enabled and disabled, so depending on your gearbox and mechanical construction of the focuser, it should be set properly here. And backlash, so yeah, it is used to compensate backlash in your focusing mechanism. In the system tab, there are several information like CPU, current temperature, the load of the system in the last 5 or 15 minutes, the IP numbers, and so on and so on. And you can also reboot or shut down the AstroBerry system from here, but some additional configuration steps needs to be performed. Well, now the outputs tab. So in the AstroLink for Pi device, you have two switchable outputs and two regulated outputs that can be controlled from here. The labels are taken from the configuration we have done already, and you can switch the DC outputs on or off, but the PWM outputs value can be set between 0 and 100%. You can have some predefined values here remembered, saved in configuration. So if you want, for example, that after connecting to the driver, one of the output will be on, another will be off, and PWM outputs are set for 40, you can go to Options tab now and save this. So one it's saved, and you connect the driver in the next session, all the output values will be set to the values that has been saved. And that is all for this INDI driver configuration. Thank you.